Now, in metaphysics and in Gnostic tradition and lore, they have what's called archons. Now, archons are often depicted as malevolent beings or forces that exert control over the material world. Some would even consider this to be what we know to be or has been referenced as reptilians or like alien greys or just varying different otherworldly creatures or beings, right? And these forces or these beings are keeping souls trapped in ignorance and away from spiritual enlightenment. So the concept of archons provides an interesting lens when you look at the movie Adjustment Bureau, when you understand how it all kind of coincides. Because when you're considering the film portraying hidden forces that control human lives, you can see the connection. So you can see the Adjustment Bureau as archons or agents as archons. So these agents of the Adjustment Bureau could be seen as archons in that they are responsible for maintaining the status quo of the world by making sure that people follow a particular plan that's set out for them. So they manipulate events and intervene with all type of human affairs, the same way archons are believed to control and manipulate the material world to keep humanity under the influence, just like in the movie The Matrix, the agents in the movie. So because the Adjustment Bureau has this enforcement of a predetermined plan, it parallels or aligns with the whole Gnostic belief that the archons impose a certain structure on the material world that prevents souls from achieving higher knowledge or spiritual freedom, because that's the only way for you to be able to break free is by having the proper knowledge. So now we follow this continued theme of Gnosticism. In the movie, we realize that the chairman is playing the role as the demiurge. So the chairman is the demiurge because in Gnostic tradition, the demiurge is the creator god. So that's the creator god that's often associated with the physical world or the material world. And the demiurge is considered to be inferior to the true transcendent god. So he's like a false god. So the chairman, because he was the unseen leader of the Adjustment Bureau, can be interpreted as the demiurge, or demiurge-like figure who creates and oversees the material world's plan, enforcing his will on humanity. Because remember, according to the Gnostics, the physical world is not the real world. The spiritual world is the real world, and the material world is just a lesser, false, illusionary reality that we've been trapped in, right? So when you look at it like that, the chairman and his agents, right? The chairman and his agents are enforcing the will of the demiurge onto humanity. So we're dealing with the illusion of control. Just as the demiurge is believed to create the illusion of reality and to control it, the chairman and the agents of the Bureau create the illusion that their plan is the only possible reality, therefore limiting the character's perception of their own free will. So the demiurge is like the wizard in The Wizard of Oz, the false illusion of control. When in reality, Dorothy, you've been had the shoes on your feet the whole time. Just click your heels 3 times and you'll go home. So you, the one, have to come to the realization that you really are the one that hold the true power. But due to all of the manipulation, all the things that be, you no longer have any knowledge of what it is that you truly have because you've been limited in this spiritual understanding. So now David being the one, this is human resistance, right? This is what the gnosis is, or the knowledge is. David is a representation of a seeker of knowledge, a seeker of gnosis, according to Gnosticism. And in Gnostic belief, Gnosis refers to the spiritual knowledge that leads to the liberation from the material world and the control of the archons. So David's struggle to break free from the Bureau's control can be seen as a metaphor for the pursuit of gnosis, or the pursuit of knowledge. His desire to forge his own path and be with the least represents a quest for a deeper truth and freedom beyond the constraints of the material world. It's a representation of seeking the spiritual path, of accessing the spiritual world. So this rebellion against control, David's rebellion, that's the Gnostic idea of what is enlightenment. It's the Gnostic idea of spiritual awakening coming from resisting the control of the archons or the powers that be and seeking one's own divine connection or destiny is by definition the path of the seeker of gnosis. So when we look at this correlation like that, it kind of puts things in a different perspective, because you got to understand, when it comes to Gnosticism, that which is predominantly Christianity is based off of Gnosticism. Now see, they had to wipe out the Gnostics because they did not want any remnants of that old ancient knowledge to be able to oppose that which was what they were using to cultivate the whole world. Because you're dealing with the what are we dealing with? The Christian Crusaders. You know, we're dealing with the doctrine of discovery. We're dealing with iconography. We're dealing with the wiping out of a people and the ancient origins of most religious traditions, all because it doesn't align with the path or the plan of how the next ruling centuries are about to go, which is evident in how we see culture and society today. So by now, I'm sure you can see how the whole concept of questioning the nature of one's reality is now kicking into play, because that's pretty much when the awakening happens, when it starts to become apparent, when you start to question the nature of things that we believe to be true and how we perceive our reality. See, this movie suggests that reality is not what it seems, because there are unseen forces such as was represented by the Adjustment Bureau. There are unseen forces that are manipulating events behind the scenes. This idea resonates with the metaphysical concept that question the true nature of reality and whether what we perceive is merely real. Because when you understand the occult, you get that the most of what is considered reality is really truly hidden from you. So when you're talking about the nature of matter, that which we can actually see with our physical eyes, the physical world that we can actually perceive and see, is something like 3% of the actual what is actually there. So there's a mass amount of dark matter, so to speak, is what it's called, that we can't even perceive, the things that we can't even see. So if it's that much of reality that we can't even be aware of, how is it possible to not believe that there are hidden forces at work that we aren't capable of seeing? Even if you want to look at it in terms of not being programmed or able to be able to see. Even if you look at it in that capacity, and if you're looking at it that way, it's still letting you know that there are forces, there are things that are happening that you can't see. There are powers that are conspiring that you have no idea that is there. Now, see, those who do the spiritual work also understand that there are positive forces that are working within our favor that we can't see as well. And dark and light is really kind of dependent upon one's perception. So there are dark forces that's working in our nature too. But that's another conversation for another day. So when you get to looking at that, you know, in that particular concept, you understand how the perception of reality, or questioning one's reality, just like in the Truman Show. He began to question his reality, just like in the Matrix. And the possibility of different outcomes, parallel reality. The movie kind of touched on that too, and the idea of it based on alternative paths and different choices. Because remember, they told us that David and Elise were meant to be together until the plan changed, and then they weren't. So they still were in tune with that old plan of being together. That's kind of like remnants of an old life. That's like karmic energy. That's like past life or reincarnation. Like when we dealing with people that we've been attached to since prior lifetimes, and we move into this life still feeling like this is where we belong, even though we may be here to do something different this time. But it's usually because we still have energy that's caught up in those bonds and in those relationships that's still playing a role into the evolution of our soul along a spiritual journey. So we know that the Bureau has this ability to manipulate events and to alter reality, which is the Gnostic view of Archon's control over the material world. And it's highlighting that this physical world that we live in, this reality that we, believe to be real, is only a construct. It's a deceptive layer of existence that's been created by these puppet masters, by the archons or by the demiurge to keep us trapped in the ignorance. And the film shows that, and it reveals that things can be controlled by a higher force, right? And so what they did was that the theme of breaking free, wanting to break free of the control from the Adjustment Bureau, right? This is what true spiritual freedom is. And they kept alluding to this possibly happening, all because of chance. They kept calling it chance. See, you got to pay attention, and you got to be able to read between the lines and fill in the holes so that you can catch what it's really trying to put down for you. They called it chance. Everywhere that they couldn't fully really explain how these things would happen, because mind you, a month after he meets the woman, Elise, in the bathroom, remember, she had to get away all of a sudden. She had to suddenly get away. So he couldn't get her information. All he knew was her name was Elise. He didn't know her last name. He didn't get her phone number. None of this, right? So he's really not supposed to see her again, as we learned in the movie, according to the plan, right? So according to the plan, he's not supposed to see her again. But a month later, Harry, who is overseeing his whole path and everything, misses his cue, and he misses where he's supposed to manipulate, and he's not. And what happens is, by chance, he runs into Elise again. And not only that, he also uncovers the veil of reality, because he catch everything that's going on with all of the agents and how they are alternating and manipulating reality. And it's this moment that he becomes aware. He becomes spiritually aware. At this point, this is like when Neo become aware of the agents and everything, and Morpheus got to put him on game. This is like that particular moment in this movie.
Solar panel. We just got approval for a recalibration of the cell. Solar panel. Who made it? I know we did it 3 years ago.
Something the research is there, and then the price point's too high on these things.
Hey!
Price point's too high on these things. Price point's too high.
What the hell are you doing?
Price point's
Grab him.